Hello, baseball and umpire fans, and welcome back to another episode of The Leading Edge, where we talk with umpires about umpiring and look to cover topics on both sides of the plate. Joining us on this episode is an umpire that's currently working within the Baseball Canada Supervision Program, has worked 2 WBSC international events, worked 6+ years in minor league baseball, and a guy who rides a unicycle in his spare time, Keith McConkey. Topics covered in this half of the interview include why he got into umpiring, part of his minor league baseball career, and his adventures in the Venezuelan Professional Baseball League, otherwise known as Winter Ball. So sit back, relax, get ready. It's coming! Interesting baseball facts. In the early 1900s, Major League Baseball umpires received a salary of between $1,500 to $2,000 annually. Now let's say we adjusted for inflation for 2021, that would be the equivalent of $45,000 to $60,000 a year. Let's take a moment and go back to 1905, where all Major League teams played a 154-game season. Let's just say that all umpires had to umpire 150 games. 1,500 divided by 150 is $10 a game fee? Wow. Well, I guess I shouldn't be growling about our $75 game fee. Hello everybody and welcome to The Leading Edge, where we talk with umpires about umpiring and look to cover topics on both sides of the plate. Now, before we get going with this episode with our guest Keith McConkey, let's just do a recap of what's been going on in the umpire world since our last episode. The reason why I brought up 1905 is because during that time period, a famous umpire by the name of Bill Clem rocked the major leagues. When I say rocked the major leagues, Bill Clem worked a record 18 World Series. This is impressive because no other umpire has ever worked more than 10. On top of working 18 World Series, Bill worked 5,375 regular season Major League Baseball games, all in the National League. He worked 103 postseason games and 2 All-Star games. Looking at all the statistics, it doesn't appear that Clem was the type of umpire to back down, as he holds the record for the most career ejections by any Major League umpire at 251. Now with all those interesting facts and numbers, I bet you're wondering, how many seasons did Bill Clem work? Well, the answer is 37. Clem worked right up into the ripe old age of 67. Though he wasn't the oldest umpire to ever work Major League Baseball, that record is held by Bruce Froemming. Now, not to take away from the fantastic career of Bill Clem, check out a link in our show description that interviews Bruce Froemming after his 38-year career in 2007. Now, as umpires, we know we rarely get recognition, and quite frankly, we never want it. But with a career like Bill Clem's, the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, did the right thing and inducted him into the Baseball Hall of Fame posthumously in 1953. Now, the reason why we bring up Bill Clem is because we want to bring up another umpire who has experienced a milestone this week. And that umpire, of course, being Joe West. Joe West made his debut in Major League Baseball in 1976, at the age of 23. During his lengthy career, one that has spanned 43 years and is the longest by any Major League umpire ever, he spent the first 23 years umpiring in the National League, before he moved to covering the entire league in 2002. Let's just put Joe's career length into perspective for a moment. He has worked for, with, under, against 10 different commissioners. Man, my head hurts just trying to digest the idea of having a new boss every 4.3 years. For a career that has lasted as long as West has, he has had some very notable games, including working Nolan Ryan's 5th career no-hitter in 1981, being part of Willie McCovey's 500th home run in 1978, Felix Hernandez's perfect game in 2012, and Albert Pujols' 400th career home run in 2013. Throughout his career, West has worked 1 World Baseball Classic in 2009. As a side note, check out a show from season 1 with Corey Davis, where Corey shares with us his fantastic experiences from meeting Joe West and some of the gifts he received when Corey attended the World Baseball Classic in 2009. Now back to Joe West. He's worked 3 All-Star games, 3 Wild Card games, 8 Division Series, 10 League Championship Series, and 6 World Series. Now off the field, Joe is known as Country Joe West, as he has released 2 country music albums, has had a small acting role in the comedy film The Naked Gun from the Files of the Police Squad, and made a cameo appearance in the television crime drama The Oldest Rookie. He also plays golf on the Celebrity Players Tour. Man, this guy's busy. Now, the real reason why we brought up Bill Clem and Joe West, undoubtedly 2 of the most famous umpires of all time in Major League Baseball, is because on May 25th, 2021, at Guaranteed Rate Park, in a game between the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago White Sox, Joe West worked home plate in his 5,376 game to break Bill Clem's record of the most regular season games umpired in Major League Baseball. And though I have never met you, Joe West, I'd just like to wish you congratulations on your achievement and thank you for being what many have described as an umpire's umpire. Now, moving on, before we get into this episode's guest with Keith McConkey, let's reflect back on the last episode where we brought on Nova Scotia native, an individual who has 2 Baseball Canada national experiences under their belt, has worked independent professional baseball, has gone to umpire school, and is now currently working minor league baseball, Alex Lurie. So if you've tuned into it, this is what you got. But if you haven't had the time to listen to it yet, this is what you're missing.
I wasn't terrible. In fact, my first game as a rookie level player, I turned an unassisted triple play. He called me to tell me, yeah, you're going to do your first senior game. And I showed up and they told me, they didn't tell me before. They told me then and there, you're on the plate 45 minutes beforehand. Seeing my name on the gold medal first base, it was a very rewarding and humbling feeling. You know, he lit a fire under my ass. My first game, I had great crew chiefs there. Trevor Gretzky was making his home debut, Wayne Gretzky's son. Wayne was rumored to be in the building, so we had sold out 6,500 people in my second game of the Can-Am. The manager said, thanks, Alex. I looked, no problem. And he was talking with another gentleman by the name of Derek Jeter.
Sure. I know lots of people that know Derek Jeter. You just name drop him anytime. But anyways, what a great episode. If you haven't had the chance to listen to it, check it out on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Alexa, Amazon Audible, TuneIn, Google Podcast. I'll go on and on, but anywhere you podcast. But I'm assuming since you're listening to this, you know where to find it. But anyways, Alex, thanks for coming on and sharing with us some of your fantastic experiences this far. And good luck in your professional umpire career. Go knock some socks off and show them what Canadian umpires are made out of. Okay, it's also the customary, check us out on Facebook, Leading Edge Umpire Stories. Sometimes we post stuff there, or we just alert you that the new pod has dropped. Again, Leading Edge Umpire Stories on Facebook. Okay, one more plug before we get into this episode. We always talk about the umpire family here on the Leading Edge, and one of the things that I would like to do for other family members is to advertise your business for free. Simply shoot me a message over on the Facebook. What does your business entail? What's the slogan? Some contact information? I'd love to put together a little commercial for fun so that we could advertise your business and other umpires can support you. Again, this is completely free, but just a way to give back. And since we're talking about advertisement, I think it's important to talk about AtlanticOfficials.ca or Mike Doucette. I've dropped his name and his company here on a couple of occasions, and I'd like to thank Mike for allowing me to do that. It's just a little fun that I get to do to make myself feel important. But the reality is, I recently used his services. I contacted him. I said, Mike, I need a new mask. What do you got in stock? What do you have? He says, I got this, this, and this. I'm like, sounds good. He hit me with the cost. I e-transferred him. Literally, he had it shipped within 13 hours. Phenomenal. I had it on my doorstep within a week. Now, I love the big retailers because they always have some great reviews and a really nice website. But the reality is, I also want to support local, or I want to support my family. So a big kudos out to Mike at AtlanticOfficials.ca. We joke, but contact Mike at 506-866-6436. I guarantee you, you contact him, Mike will help you get on your way. But anyways, thanks again, Mike. Appreciate the great working relationship we have and the support of Leading Edge Umpire Stories. Okay, that's enough. I'm tired of talking now. It's time that we get on to this interview. So without further ado, Leading Edge Entertainment is honored to introduce a longtime Baseball Canada umpire and current supervisor, an umpire with 2 international events under his belt, a guy that worked 6+ years in minor league baseball, including working the AA Midsummer Classic, the Major League Baseball Home Run Derby, and a guy that can't part with his 1995 Charlotte Hornet starter jacket, Keith McConkey. Keith, welcome to The Leading Edge.
Hey, Philip, thanks for having me. I tell you, I was pretty excited when you reached out a couple of weeks ago and say, how'd you like to join me on my podcast? And I thought, well, what the hell? It took you so long.
Well,
I'm listening to all these guys like Shoe Chuck and all these guys at Rob Allen telling their stories. I'm like, what about me?
Well, it's an honor, first of all, and I can't wait to share some of these stories. Now, you have to blame your buddy Trevor Grieve for giving me your info.
Typical.
Well, we'll thank Trevor for this episode later, but first thing we like to do here on The Leading Edge is we like to give the guest the opportunity to share with us a little bit of their past history. So first thing, Keith, did you play baseball growing up?
Sure did. Probably stopped at around junior age, I would think. Well, I shouldn't say that. I stopped playing baseball. My buddy's still trying to wrangle me out and to play slow pitch, but
doesn't count.
You know, the problem is we play in like Division 2 or whatever. You got like Division 1, it's all these pro guys, and Division 2, and I just want to catch because it's safe. And they want me to play second base. I'm like, boys, these guys are hitting the ball really hard at me, and I don't like it. Like, I'm used to trying to get out of the way of the ball, and now you want me to on purpose get in front of it. I don't know if I like that.
I don't think I could play the infield in slow pitch. My face is too beautiful.
Well, yeah, I don't understand the face too beautiful part. I have a face for radio. You know, like, they're not going to put me in the outfield because can't judge a fly ball. You know, they hit the ball in the air in the infield. I'm playing second base, and I'm hoping the shortstop or the first baseman come over and get it. But they're buddies, and, you know, it's better than sitting at home, do nothing.
But slow pitch in the outfield, isn't it home run or bust in slow pitch?
No, lots of cans of corn. You know, you get these heroes, the 25-year-olds that they're swinging for the fences every time, and it's really hard to hit that ball when it's coming from over top of your head, right? It's a really awkward. It's an awkward swing.
But isn't that just a Ken Griffey Jr. swing plane? Rip it from the ground up?
Yeah, if they were swinging like Ken Griffey Jr., though, they wouldn't be playing on my team.
But the Mariners are about sub 500 at the time of this recording, so they're not very good either. But looking back at baseball, you played till 21U. What position did you play?
I was a catcher. I guess, you know, naturally going from being a catcher to being an umpire was sort of a natural. You know, you're used to seeing the ball come in a specific way. So, you know, I think it created a level of comfort in the early going that I wouldn't have had I been playing a different position.
Well, it seems very common. A lot of the umpires that we've had on talk about their history, and they are catchers. And one of the questions I have to ask every umpire is, do you think you've seen the strike zone better as a catcher? You know, better umpire as a catcher? Did you get every pitch right?
Well, no, but I think part of the thing was all the shots to the head when you're catching. So you take a bunch of shots to the head, and now you want to get behind the plate and umpire. But better umpire, no. I just think probably a greater level of comfort on how the ball comes in, and, you know, not being completely worried about getting hit and stuff. It didn't make me a better umpire, that's for sure.
Takes a while to get used to being an umpire behind the plate and getting rid of that fear. I recently read some stuff about catchers pulling pitches and getting some strikes for their pitchers. Do you think you were any good at getting that extra strike for your pitcher?
Oh, I was. What do you mean by good? Did I think I could pull it 18 inches and get it called a strike? Absolutely. Did I? Probably not, right?
You're sounding like Molina. Sometimes everything somehow hits the center of the dish.
I'm sounding like a guy named Ronnie Paulino that I had going through the minor leagues. If you look him up, he played quite a while in the big leagues. But, you know, his managers and position players and stuff used to apologize for him all the time. It was like he was catching with a fly swatter. It was brutal. And he was a giant, and he stood with a straight back when he was supposed to be crouched down. So you could really just see his numbers and a glove moving all over the place. It was an adventure.
Well, you know what? Now, being a good framer could be beneficial. It could be detrimental. Like you said, it's frustrating. But I recently read a statistic about Buster Posey being the best framer in Major League Baseball. Now, like we know, there's a statistic about everything in Major League Baseball these days, but Buster Posey in 2016 saved his team 27.6 runs If you're anything like the Blue Jays that lose a lot of games by 1 run, saving 27.6 runs a season could be the differential between winning and losing 27 games.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty cool stat. I'd really like to see how they figure it out. I'd like to see the math behind it to figure it out. I did see a thing the other day, probably a few months ago, and they showed catchers, and some of them are starting with the glove really low to the ground now, and they're sort of, as instead of that, give them a big target nonsense, right? I mean, a big leaguer should be able to throw a strike whether they're throwing at a glove or not. They start low, and as the pitch comes in, the glove is drifting up instead of that whole reach down, stab it, and then pull it back up.
Right.
And that one made a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
They're like, that one that's in around the bottom knees, which for me has always been the most challenging one. You got a sinker ball pitcher throwing hard, and you got a catcher with a lot of glove movement. Those ones can be tough, right? And for me, that's the one. It made tons of sense if they're drifting the glove up than what you see now. You're talking Yadi Molina. That guy he's pretty slick back there.
Yeah, he is.
Like he makes some real borderline pitches look like a tasty treat.
I wouldn't call him slick. I'd call him more stick, because he is the catcher that did have the ball stick to a foreign substance on his chest protector. And just to prove it, I'll throw a link in the show description. But that's a topic for another day. But you mentioned that you struggle with the low outside corner. I feel like you have the Aaron Roberts syndrome. It's okay. I'm glad that you admitted early.
So I wouldn't say low outside. Low middle, low in has always been my most challenging pitch. And I don't know why. I really don't know why. I've tried getting lower, and I know we teach don't put your chin below the top of the catcher's head, but really at the professional level, it's do whatever you need to do to get pitches right. Right. So you're going to miss that outside pitch. Well, probably not. So if you think about the catcher, the pitches on the outside corner, the catcher is going to open up that glove shoulder.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're going to open up and they're going to give you a bit of a look. So I've never had that issue in and out for some reason, that low middle, low inside pitch. And if the catcher crowds you in and you got that cutter at the knees, that's a tough one too.
It is. And I think we teach fundamentals, and you're the course conductor, I'm not, but we teach fundamentals with the game in perfect sequence. But in the reality, the catcher does not set up the same way every time. The hitter doesn't set up the same way every time. The arm slot angle from the pitcher is different every time. It's just try to do your best with and try to stay as close to the fundamental as you can. But like you said, just goal is to get pitches right.
Yeah, and you have to teach some basics, right? When you got little kids, you got to learn to crawl before you walk, before you run, before you jump over hurdles, right? So, and it comes with reps. Everything we do in life, 10,000 times to perfection, you might hear from time to time. So, the more reps you have, the better. And I'll be honest about it. When I'm nowhere near the umpire I am now than I was when I was doing it every single day.
Yes.
Right? Like nowhere near. Now you've ridden the bike so many times, you can figure stuff out pretty quickly. It's supposed to be last March. We're going to the Olympic qualifier, and I went into the cages in February and saw some pitches, and then I would have went down there and been okay, right? Because you might struggle for the first inning or two, but then you figure it out. You've been on that bike so many times. And at that international level, it's so interesting because they've now introduced replay and this clock, right? And so now you have to handle, the clock and the timing and a lot of game management issues that come with that. I've seen at the international level, umpires fall apart because they didn't have the ball strike safe out stuff was not automatic. They didn't have that down. They weren't that confident with it. So once they had to start managing the other things, those basics fell apart. And that's a disaster waiting to happen. And I've seen it, ejections and potential protests, and it's kind of scary stuff, right? But do you think at that international level where it's supposed to be elite, but you end up that way sometimes, they introduce things that people are not used to?
Yeah, and that's the rigidity, and that's about trying to be able to work on game management, but not so much as trying to control the game or the teams, but trying to control yourself. Being the supervisor, I know I've gone to Baseball Canada National Championships, and just adding some kind of different aspect to the game just throws people completely off from... You're supposed to work at 5 o'clock and it rained. Now you're going to work at 4 o'clock instead. That just throws guys off.
Or midnight.
Right.
Right. That's so interesting because having umpired at national championships and supervised at national championships, people concentrate so hard on, oh, I'm going to this national championship and I really got to kind of master this 3 umpire system. You're now killing yourself. Ball strike, safe out, rule interpretations, enforcement of rules that happened, or you're going to be a crew chief and you're now focusing so hard on the other people on your crew and helping them out that you now struggled. I understand that challenge. It's because you're now, the thing that freaks people out is I got a supervisor watching every minute of every game, right? So instead of just going out and doing what you need to do and doing the thing that you do every single day, so many people just, I got a supervisor. Am I putting my right foot in the proper spot? Who cares? Like, these are the fundamentals. This is a 3 umpire system. You're moving here, you moving here, and here's why. Do I care whether you're 3 feet one way versus the other? No, because that makes zero difference in how well you officiated. So yes, there's a supervisor here, but we're not necessarily there to judge people and evaluate. You're there to mentor and you're there to help people become better officials, right? That's really what you're there for. Now, if somebody, part of the evaluation matrix of the rubrics that we put together several years ago, that really needed to provide consistency in the evaluation process from one supervisor to the other. And it's just like the business world, right? You provide consistency in the evaluation matrix so that people know where they stand. If somebody's not ready to be at the Baseball Canada Cup or the senior men's national championship and they maybe should have been a level down, the recommendation to put them at that other level is entirely to help them be successful, right? And the other thing I remind people through this process, Philip, is it's not about us. Those teams are there to try to win a national championship. It's a wonderful honor for us, and we're putting the best officials in the country at that level to be, to officiate those games. But in the end, it's not really about us. Those teams are trying to win a national championship. We're going to do whatever we need to do to put the right people on the field to make sure that it's done fairly.
Right.
Right. So it's, I love supervising, but it is harder than umpiring at a national championship. It's not even close.
Since you brought it up, how is it harder?
It's more work. There's more challenging. There's more tough conversations. There's zero time off.
Right. Yes,
so you go to a city you've never been to, and you want to see the sights. Well, you better make a deal with somebody to try to get away from the yard for a little bit. You better hope some games get done early. But I find supervising very rewarding. I enjoy it.
And that reward, do you feel that that's because you've been through the process before and you feel like now you're contributing back to a program that you received, I'm going to put words in your mouth, a lot from, or is that it's just a different challenge at this point in your career?
It's a different challenge. So I look at it like, okay, so I could go umpire a national championship and I'm going to get this cool free trip to probably somewhere I've never been before. But from an on-field developmental standpoint, it's probably space that's better taken up by somebody else. So they're probably it's going to be a more enriching, rewarding experience for them to be umpiring on the field. Where I feel like, the time spent to go through the clinician process and all the years teaching clinics and then going back through and having the honor of teaching at a caravan, to get my master course conductor status, that's where I find the challenges. How do I get better as a supervisor, right? Like I could tell you the X's and O's of umpiring and, game management things that probably you might not soak in and Trevor would be the same way, and Aaron and anybody, that's gone to international baseball. There's lots of guys and gals, lots of guys and gals. I don't want to exclude the gals in our organization that have done
some fantastic people.
Gone those high levels. But, it's just where's the most value for the program, right? And I find I'm still learning all the time. There's some of these course conductors that were educators for a living, Chuck and Chris Wilhelm, and they're just unbelievable. And Lisa Turbott's another one. I think they're so creative, and their ability, your ability to teach is something that I'm always trying to learn from. It's remarkable.
It is. And those educators definitely bring a lot to our program. You've mentioned some names there, but one individual, Ron Suchuk, once explained to me that the course conductor program is basically a small pedagogy of education. I was like, what's pedagogy mean? And he's basically the theory of teaching. And That's one of the nice things.
Kids. Did he correct himself? The theory of teaching kids. He wants to talk about andragogy.
Andragogy. Okay. So adult learning?
Adult learning. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I look at the Baseball Canada course conductor program. Like I said, I'm not part of it. That is a goal of mine. Some people just think it's all about just learning about umpiring and that's it. It's learning how to teach people. For people who don't know how to deliver educational material to others. Because if we've learned through this pandemic with all this stay-at-home teaching, it's an art.
There is. I mean, I remember my first caravan. So I was fortunate enough that I came out of that caravan as a senior course conductor, and that was before we moved to the way we're doing it now, where you just come out as a course conductor, and then you really have to go through a mentorship program to get to that senior course conductor status. So, I mean, I remember going through that process, and I was going through it, just started a new job, and I was in the process of moving. Like, I think my house closed, the week after the caravan, and I get into the hotel room, and my roommate, and I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I get into the room, and this guy's got poster boards, like 4x6 poster boards up on the wall, and he's got all his shit written down. And I was like, what did I get myself into? I mean, like, he's got a PowerPoint, and I was like, I didn't even know what PowerPoint was. Like, this is 2007, and I got like some cue cards written out.
Yep. Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, I'm going to have to come up with some ideas to spice this up and use some flip charts and stuff, because this dude is showing me up.
Right.
I was like, what did I get myself into? But, the real fortunate part is, because of the level that I had been umpiring, the baseball piece of it, and having those tough conversations, and those were some things that came naturally. So it's a lot like going into a national championship, and now all of a sudden you're forgetting what you already know how to do. Right. So I had to focus on the teaching piece and the things that we're learning through the process. But it was cool, man, learning about multiple learning styles, and the instructors were fantastic. I learned so many skills that really I use today.
Every day.
Yeah, every single day.
That's what I tell a lot of people about umpiring and trying to recruit people, is that you can acquire skills in this program at a various level for a various amount of things. And it's not just calling balls and strikes that you can use every day.
Life skills, right? Like life skills that you can learn.
I guess this is the best time to say it, is that thank you go out to all our course conductors and our people that try to make this program better from the instructional aspect. As we learned this year in the pandemic, a lot of us might not be getting on the field. A lot of us are taking this opportunity to brush up on how to be better umpires without umpiring. It's just a new process, that whatever this perpetual beta that we're stuck in right now. But thank you to everyone that keeps putting back so that we can all be better umpires when baseball resumes.
Oh, like, I don't know, the national clinic this year.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, it was fantastic, and it was so much different than what sometimes you get in the repetition of, you do the same thing every single year, and how do you come up with something different? So from a teaching perspective, we're always trying to make the product better, and we're always trying to, do things a little bit differently, and you need to start thinking outside the box. So the one thing I really appreciate about the National Clinic this year was it was way outside the box, man. Like, yeah. It was partially out of necessity, right. But it was, the geniuses behind that. Amazing job.
Yeah, it was. And, I come from healthcare, and quality improvement is always big on the list. And sometimes you got to create a crisis to get change. And if the pandemic isn't a crisis, I don't know what is, essentially. But it forced change within the program, and it takes leaders to really adapt to that change. Mm-hmm. One of the things I liked about this year's Super Clinic is the opportunity to go back a couple times. Won't surprise a lot of people who know me. I might fiddle and fitch in my seat all day at a Super Clinic, and I'm the guy passing notes or making smart ass comments. But I was able to focus on my own at home, review it, and then go back and it really hammered it through. As crazy as it sounds, umpiring 20 years, that this year is the year I finally understand batter, runner, runner's lane interference. I just feel like I was able to focus on that, and that's what I've gained from this year's Super Clinic. With the most important takeaway being that it's the inability of the fielder to field the ball that causes the interference, not the throw. Finally,
at first base,
yes.
Runner's lane. Okay,
yes.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Like runner's lane. Like, it has everything to do with the first baseman or the fielder trying to catch the ball. If the guy makes a bad throw, it has nothing to do with that. But I'm going to say it talks about the innovation of the course and the ability to go back and do things and just doing things outside of the box that really helped me clue into that rule.
And the other advantage was it was consistent across the country, right?
So couldn't agree more. Mm-hmm. I remember 2-3 years ago, maybe there was the clinic agenda that went out, and check swings was the hot topic of the year. And I remember communicating with other people across the country, and they're like, yeah, we read the check swing and it was kind of hit or miss. But we're like, well, we really dove into it. And they're like, yeah. So even the interpretation of a check swing within the Baseball Canada program had potential for various interpretations of the same rule.
And I'm a rule book terminology freak.
Okay.
So every time somebody says check swing, I cringe.
Okay.
Because the rule book doesn't say anything about check swing, right? It says half swing. So I've had more than one protest. So I've always been paranoid about using rule book terminology.
Fair.
Right? If you misquote the rule based on the wrong words or how you say it, you could cost yourself a protest, right? Because the person reading the protest or deciding on it may not know. They may just take the words you use and decide something else. So I am a bit of a freak on the rule book terminology.
We all got our thing, and that's yours.
Yeah, probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm not a guy who studied the rule book all the time. I did pretty good on the rules at umpire school, but I never would have been that rule guy. There was a guy on my crew in AA named Brent Rice who was partially responsible for rewriting it into its current vision. He started doing this when we were in A-ball. So he was a rule freak, and he was just amazing at it, right? He always taught at Harry's. He was one of the lead instructors at Wendelstedt Umpire School for many years, and he's a lunatic. He's like Chris Graham. He went through the minor leagues twice. I'm not sure why anybody would do that to themselves or their family. It's the definition of insanity. New city every 4 days, sleeping in hotels, eating garbage food. It doesn't sound like a good lifestyle to me.
The guy likes the Best Western points.
Yeah. Yeah, Best Western, Super 8, the Star Motel in Jamestown, New York, where you got a duck. I don't know what you call it. Is it a school of bats? I don't know what you call it, but
I think it's called a cauldron of
bats just outside of your hotel room, and you got to duck them to get in your room and then close the door as fast as you possibly can to avoid them getting in. Not a nice place, right? Super 8 in New Britain, Connecticut, where you quite literally, your pillow would be the thickness of a mouse pad.
Oh.
And just terrible. You're concerned the sheets might not be clean. But there was a McDonald's that shared a parking lot with the hotel, so that was pretty badass for a guy making $22 a day in per diem.
99-cent McChickens.
Oh, buddy, Wendy's, you could get $2.99. I think it was 99 cents. You get a 5-piece nugget or 4-piece nugget. You get 2 of those and a Caesar salad for under $5 with tax. Sweet.
Hey, don't forget to add that Frosty.
You're right.
Okay, I have some minor league questions coming up, but let's jump back. Why did you get into umpiring?
Getting into umpiring was interesting. I'm the guy that did it as a part-time job. I always tell young kids, why are you doing this? And they, nobody wants to answer, we want to stay in the game and give back to the game. I'm like, you're 14. You're still playing Pee-wee or whatever it's called now. What do you mean give back to the game? I said, I'm the guy that's going to be honest with you and tell you that I did it to make some cash.
Good.
So I had it would have been like the Legion baseball locally. I grew up in a town called Thorold. So at the time it was about 16,000 people. My best friend, his father was running the local Legion baseball, and he was short on officials. He said to me one day, "Hey, Keith, how'd you like to try this umpiring?" I said, "Well, why the hell not?" I enjoyed it first time out, especially when they handed me the cash.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't get a check. They handed me $20. And we're talking, I'm 45 now. So I was probably 14. We're talking 30 years ago, right? Yep. So we're not even talking Y2K yet. And I'm making $20 a night as a 14-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
At 15. So that was probably the allure, right? I'm making money.
No question. Yep.
Dollar bill, y'all. So then I kept going back. And I remember I enjoyed it so much and I was doing well. And I started looking at these guys in the big leagues that are, they got these inside chest protectors. And at the time we were using the balloon. And even at that age, I knew didn't make a whole lot of sense. This gigantic thing. It's nice because I'm not getting hit in the arms or anything, but
right.
I want to look like a pro. I was enjoying it, and I went and fashioned my own inside chest protector out of a pair of Sherwood or Cooper shoulder pads. Remember those, those flimsy one, like old timers shoulder pads?
Yep.
I had a pair of those. And are you old enough to remember Sears catalog?
Yes.
It was about 1.5 inches thick at the time.
That was the fall edition.
So I drilled a couple of holes in the top, took some old hockey laces or shoelaces, tied that sucker down on the bottom. I had like an inside chest protector. I had that for a couple of years, and my parents saw that I really enjoyed it. So finally they got me for Christmas the one year, they got me one of those inside, like the rib, like the old Plus Pos, but not that nice. It looked like a Rawlings. It looked like it was like the umpire's version of a kid's chest protector.
Yep.
Like I'd be petrified to put that on nowadays and go behind the plate, even with a kid soft tossing. Yeah. So I mean, they saw I really enjoyed it, and so that's what made me stick with it. I got started because I loved getting paid cash at the plate. And what else was I going to do in the summertime as a 14-year-old? 15. I keep saying maybe I was 15 or 16, and people keep telling me I was younger than that. So whatever, we'll go with my story, not theirs.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I got started umpiring. Somebody asked me, told me I could make some money, and I said, woo-wee.
That is exactly why we get into it. I don't understand why people lie, but we get into it to make money. Oh, and I also started umpiring just so I could eject old people.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie on that. Yeah. Might have had a little ego when I first started.
Well, I always said to people, it was my BS meter, right? So even as a kid, you're like, that's doesn't make any sense, and I'm not going to put up with you being like that, right? So talking earlier about a life lesson, the ability to stand up for yourself or stick up for yourself was a huge one, and I still get a story from one of our local guys. He's like, hey, do you remember when you told that guy to F off? And I was like, that didn't happen. I didn't curse ever on a baseball field at anybody, especially not as like a 15-year-old. He goes, no, that happened. I said, not a chance. I will never admit to something like that because it's not the truth.
Fair enough. I've been accused of saying things I didn't say before. People would say, oh, he said this. And I'm like, not a chance I said that. That is not in my vocabulary. Now, if I called them X, X, or Y, then they're probably telling the truth. But I do get frustrated when they put words in my mouth of things I would never say.
But I did have my first death threat as about a 16-year-old, where
been there.
I probably had an ejection or two. And one of the people who got ejected, his grandfather threatened to stab me.
Stay gold, pony boy.
And I was like, yeah, no, we're going to call the cops. Normally I'd brush something like that off, but this guy's 60 years old and he might actually stab me. I believe him.
You got nothing left to lose.
Cops is filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Yeah, so we're going to call the cops. This has gone too far. This is kids' baseball. It's like Pee Wee or Bantam baseball. It's gone too far. Did I mention it was house league?
Some people say living the dream. That person was living in a dream. Wow.
Yeah.
So let's look at your Baseball Canada experiences. Were you part of the Baseball Canada National Umpire Program prior to going the minor league route?
Kind of, sort of. So
yeah.
I went to umpire school for the first time. So I went twice. I went to Harry's in 2008.
Okay.
Sorry, 2008, 1998.
That's when you're like retired, I thought.
The old timers is getting to me. Yeah, 1998. So I flew down to Florida. In 98, I would have been 22, just turned 22, or turned 22 while I was down there. There was another Canadian guy in my class named Andrew Higgins. Some of you may
yes.
know who he is or not. So we both fared pretty well. So they ended up taking 15 people from that class to the minor league evaluation course, or PBUC evaluation course at the time. And Andrew was selected to go. And I think they told me I was 17th, is what they classed me at, 17. And so a lovely lady named Lillian Patterson, who's since passed away, she really looked after the umpires in the minor leagues and cared about us like we were her own kids. But she called me and was like, you know what, we need to get your visa and stuff in order to get all your information, because we're pretty sure that we're going to go way past that 15 from Harry's, and it would have been the same number 15 from Jim Evans at the time. And I think Brinkman was still going. Joe Brinkman
School.
Yeah,
he was Cocoa, Florida. Didn't he go up till 99?
I don't know.
98. Yeah.
You might know better than me. And
yeah.
it might have been like 15, 15, and 10. So there were probably 30 people. So we didn't end up going to the reserve list, they call it. Didn't end up going there. So I never ended up getting a job in 98. So there were, I think, just a couple of people who didn't in 98 didn't get jobs. So RJ Thompson was the name of one guy, and then Andrew. And Andrew, for some reason, chose not to go back. Whatever his life had going on, he chose not to go back. But of course, at the time, Harry's school had a reputation for wanting people to come back more than once. And I said, well, that makes sense, right? It's cash flow. They are running a business, right? So anyways, I went back and I had a really successful camp and finished as I won this big gigantic trophy that I broke shortly after getting it. Was like top returning student or whatever. So
most improved. That
was 98. The number one student in that class was Mike Estabrooks. You guys might know who he is. He's Major League Umpires. Yeah. So anyways, I was all set to go down to the evaluation course in Cocoa, and a week before I was supposed to go, I got a call from Mike Fitzpatrick, who was the umpire director for PBUC at the time, and said, sorry, apparently for the last 30 years, we've been doing this whole visa thing incorrectly. So, we had this visa in place for you to come down, and now INS is telling us we can't.
Okay.
So, but don't worry, we're going to issue you a special invite for next year. I had to wait, and that was pretty demoralizing, man. Like, you have to wait a full year to go down, and now you don't know any of the people that are there.
Yeah.
But anyways, I went back down to camp in 2000. I was one of the first 9 to get a job offer to the Gulf Coast League. And the cool part about them having a work visa in place for me already was I was allowed to stay at Cocoa Expo and work college and high school games.
Okay.
And then I was able to go to extended spring training. If I didn't have that hiccup, I wouldn't have been able to do either one of those things. So it worked out for me. And so I ended up getting hired in 2000, and a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks into that Cocoa Expo. I'll get into a story about Cocoa Expo and what a grind that is. So I get offered to go to extended spring in Sarasota, Florida, which is one of the best experiences of my entire life.
Okay.
And then, so I get offered a contract. They're like, hey, we know you didn't work a single game in the Gulf Coast League, but we're going to assign you to the New York Penn League. I'm like, sweet. I don't have to sweat my ass off in Florida all summer.
Yeah, it's a big difference. Like, big difference.
I get stadiums, we get fans, you travel a little bit. So, I mean, it really was a blessing. I think the stadium games in the Gulf Coast League are really good for development because it's hot, nobody's there to watch. So you can screw stuff up all the time and learn from it. And you don't have that added stress of travel and hotels and all that other stuff, right? You get to really leave your stuff in one spot. And there's lots of beaches in Florida. There are no beaches in Hudson Valley, New York. No. Right? Or Jamestown, New York. There's no beaches in Jamestown. No. There's just bat-infested hotels, right? And groundskeepers that refuse to put fair foul lines onto the warning track until you tell the general manager the game's not starting until you have fair foul lines on the warning track. But Cocoa is an interesting part. They keep the umpires there after the fact. So they do evaluation course, college and baseball, and then a supervisor's league. And they used to leave us at Cocoa, and it was like a dorm room and just concrete floor. And it was like 14 grown men in one room and 11 grown men and Rhea Cortizio in the other room. So poor Rhea was around that. So it smelled like ass and just, communal showers. It was dirty. Guys were knocking their plate shoes out. They're knocking dirt on the floor. And the liner on the mattress underneath my sheet was plastic and the sheet wouldn't stay on. So you'd wake up in the middle of the night and it was plastic and it was no air conditioning. It was getting hot. Like, it was really
sounds real tasty,
real horrible living conditions. And you'd get about 2 or 3 weeks in and guys would have 2 games a day. And they're like, you know what? I'm tired. I want to work 1 game and then I want to drink a bunch of beer, right? And hang out with the guys and watch a game. And you would get some guys that were just starving to death, right? They had no money. We had a guy there, Dan DeHaan is his name, and he was eating ketchup sandwiches. Oh. So Dan that guy would work like 5 games a day. Oh. Like he would take everybody's games because he needed the money. He was like, family at home and I mean, just
trying to make it work.
Just trying to make it work, right? And I would work I started even that earlier. I don't like working more than one game. I hate doubleheaders, man.
I think we all do.
We don't want to do this twice. I don't even want to do this once sometimes. Why do it twice? So we're in those living conditions. And then we get to the end of that. And I think it's like, that started in March. And then we get to end of April. So I was only there about a month, and they said, hey, we're sending you to extended spring training, drive across the state to Sarasota. In Sarasota, they housed us in condos. So there's 6 umpires, 3 condos. You shared a room, it's like a 1.5 or twin bed or whatever in a room, but you shared a little living room and a kitchen and a little balcony. So the 6 of us were there. They put you on an island called Siesta Key.
Okay.
You're like 150 meters from this white sand beach in the warm Gulf of Mexico. You're like 300 meters the other way to the strip with like the daiquiri deck and the beach club that had a live reggae band every Thursday night. I'm like 23, 24 years old.
Prime time.
I worked a lot of games in extended spring training, not at 100%, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Sundays were a write-off because we had no games on Sundays. So we would tear it down, man. We were every Saturday night, we were watching the sun come up on Sunday morning and, swimming in the Gulf of Mexico. So talk about what a cool experience, right? Being 23 years old. So
definitely maximize that per diem.
Yeah. I mean, used it all plus the money that you got paid for being there.
Right.
But it's interesting because you get some great deals. Like sometimes you drink all night at the bar and you pay $10 for I mean, somebody's making a bunch of money in tips right there and it's not the bar owner. Right. But it was a blast. God, it was a lot of fun.
You sure that wasn't your buddy picking up the tab? That's why he was eating ketchup sandwiches?
Oh, you know what? He was with me in extended spring training. But he didn't make it out to the bar all the time. He was, a man of God. He was living life the right way while we were being degenerates, man. The rest of us.
I just look at those ketchup packets and think about all the nutrients. I don't think he had the energy to make it out.
We used to take turns, buying him lunch and stuff. He'd be like, Dan, come on, we're going down to get subs. No, I'm good. No, Dan, let's go. Like, I can't, this is not even about you anymore, bud. I can't stand seeing you eat ketchup sandwiches anymore. Like, I'm going to hurl, right? Like, I can't watch this. So, yeah, it's, the poor guy. I think he's doing okay now. I think he has like a full-time job and he's got a bunch of kids. And so life is good.
Life's good for Dan, people. Don't worry.
Dan is doing okay. Yeah, that's a good, I miss Sarasota.
Let's be honest here. Do you miss Sarasota or do you miss 23-year-old Keith McConkey with hair?
Well, I miss 23-year-old Keith McConkey in Sarasota.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Life wasn't so complicated back then.
Now, you said you skipped the Gulf Coast League and you went right to the New York Pen. How long did you spend there?
I spent a full season there. I worked with a guy named Art Stewart from Chicago. One of the best partners I ever worked with, Art Stewart. Great guy. Used to drink Maker's Mark and Coke every time we went out, but there was never a night that he didn't want to accompany you. So you're never going out alone. And there were some cool cities in the New York Penn League. Thinking about, Jamestown, New York was, it wasn't the worst city, but it wasn't the best. They didn't get very many fans. And, but you got to go places. Williamsport was a city. So we checked out the Little League, the home of the Little League World Series. Yep. And we stayed at a hotel called the Genetti that they call, didn't have very good air conditioning. So the nickname of the hotel was called the Sweaty Genetti. So it was fitting, man. Yeah. The air conditioning was old. It was right downtown, but Williamsport was a cool town. You got places like Mahoning Valley, which I think is like Niles, Ohio. Great ballpark. They used to get 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people a night. And you're in your first season. and so we used to love going to there because it was a cool ballpark, and we had some hookups. We had a place we used to go to, a place called Sullivan's, and that's where I really got my current affinity for Irish whiskey. A place called Sullivan's, because you'd go there and the owner would be like, "Hey boys, what's going on? Here's a shot." Like,
can't say no,
dude. I'm driving. Here's a shot, right? Like dartboards, and they looked after you, right? Some great ballparks. The travel was pretty good. It wasn't very far. The only bad thing about the New York Penn League was 2-game series and home and homes. Like, you'd go from the middle of nowhere, New Jersey, it was the Cardinals at the time, to Hudson Valley, New York, was the Devil Rays. And it was about an hour and a half drive. I mean, you would go, spend one night in a hotel, get up in the morning and drive to the next city the next day. And then you're in another city the next day. And that made it hard to get into any sort of routine. Once you get to long season where they have 3 and 4 game sets, you at least can take a couple of pieces of clothes out of a suitcase, right? You leave the vehicle unpacked for a couple of days. You don't have to pack it up every day. So, and they made us in A-ball, they make you travel during the day.
Okay.
So that can create some problems, right? Like, I remember in the Midwest League going from somewhere in Michigan to Wisconsin, and you get stuck in midday traffic in Chicago, and you're starting to get concerned you're not making it to Wisconsin, right? If you had to make that trip overnight, it's easy, right? You're not going to run into that traffic in Chicago. But yeah, the Penn League, 1 year, and then I went back to spring training. So I got my first season in spring training, went to Vero Beach with the Dodgers, which baseball's Dodger Town, they used to call it, was a real cool setup. They had the back fields, you had rooms right on site, and they had buffet and the locker rooms there. So you really didn't have to leave baseball city. You did if you wanted to find something else to do, and there's not a ton to do in Vero. It's a pretty quiet retirement community. Yes. But the Dodgers were a top-notch organization and really looked after you, and fed you well, and did your laundry and all that stuff. So that's cool. Did spring training there, and then forgot to mention, 2000 when I got in, they hired 50 people.
Yes, that was right after the strike.
Right after the 99 thing. Yeah, so they hired 50 people, and they went deep into the reserve list. And I'm thinking now, I'm looking at some of the guys that came off the reserve list. The top couple were a guy named Chris Conroy.
Yep, working the show.
I don't know if people know who he is, but he's like a 2-man in the big leagues now. Yep. And then another guy named Delphine Colon, who probably worked 150 games in the big leagues, Puerto Rican guy. And then for some reason, and gigantic, about 6'6" or something. And he never made it full time. But, interesting enough that those guys would have got jobs that year and may never have gone back because they weren't even close to getting jobs out of umpire school. It was like a fluke, right?
I think we're going to see that coming up in the next couple of years too, with last year's major hire.
Yeah, I think Major League Baseball is trying to keep some of those 99 hirees around.
Oh, for sure.
Promote them to crew chief. They're trying to do that on purpose because they can't have another mass exodus, right? They can't have 15 jobs. Now, the cool part about the minor leagues is you look at AA and AAA, these guys, they get video of every game that they have. So if they have an ejection, they can play it back and review it. And did I handle it right? And they can go back and watch pitches and plays. And so really from a training perspective, they have so many tools at their disposal that I never had.
Well, that's just it. You didn't have that opportunity. No. And I mean, they're boring a little bit these days. They don't have as much fun as we did. They think fun is going to the gym and golfing. And, right. I love going to the gym and golfing as much as everybody else, but you can't golf at 11 o'clock at night. Well, that's it, right? Yeah. And of course, the social media world, you can't get caught out doing something these days. It's going to haunt you in 8 years when maybe you get the call. Yeah,
when Major League Baseball is doing their due diligence and they're knocking on your neighbors' doors and stuff to try to make sure that you're a good fit, those things might come up. So I get it. It's I'm not sure I'd want to be in the minor leagues at this stage of the game. Well, now the good part is in AA as a crew chief, I was making $22 a day in per diem. Now they at least get the government rate. They're making $60 a day in per diem. I'm like, well, you can be in better shape because you can eat a really nice salad at lunch. You could eat 3 meals a day and you could eat a salad and you could eat a proper breakfast instead of like absolutely loading up on cinnamon buns and waffles at the continental breakfast, you can go have a real breakfast, and you don't have to double size the cheesesteak at lunch, eat it at 1:30, go take a nap, and then don't eat before the game, right? Like, yeah, my pregame meal is a cup of coffee, and then I'm gonna, especially places like the Florida State League I went through, your Jupiter used to get 2 ice cold hot dogs. Those suckers, we'd have to bury them in the garbage so the clubby didn't see that we threw them out. I'm like, I can't. Number one, it's 1,000,000 degrees outside. So all I want to do is chug 4 bottles of Gatorade and 3 bottles of water before I leave the locker room. And now I'm not hungry. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't want to eat 2 ice cold hot dogs.
You filled it. Yeah, you mentioned Art Stewart, and you said he was the best partner you ever had.
One of the best.
One of the best. Okay. What makes a good partner in minor league baseball?
A good partner, I mean, generally it'd be like in life, right? So, right. I mean, I've heard stories about driving and one partner is a smoker who wants to smoke in the car and doesn't care what the other guys think. Right. So a good partner is, someone who, at the time I was going through there, he shared a room too. Right. So you put 2, young but grown men in a room together, in a hotel room together, and you sleep in the same room the whole time. Is this guy, leaves the bathroom door open when he goes in, or, is he respectful of you all the time? And Art really was. He was that type of guy. And most of the partners I had were pretty good about the room sharing thing.
But a good partner on the field is important off the field too. Like that's what makes a good partner. It's a 360 compliment.
Candidly, when you're in that situation, you're judging what good of a person your partner is more off the field than you are on the field. Fair enough. I mean, you're not going to get a partner sewer you on the field in professional level, because really that's going to bite themselves in the butt, right? You're all going to protect each other regardless of what's going on off the field. You're going to protect each other on the field. You're going to have each other's back because you have to, right? It's, you never know when you're going to have to fight your way out of something. And old Artie and I had a situation in Hudson Valley when you talked about the runners lane interference. We had one and we missed it, right? It was the runner was on the inside and the ball came right over the shoulder of the runner, never touched him, hit the first baseman right in the chin. That ended up being the win and run. And the manager, who's no longer a professional baseball because he was a lunatic, chased us all the way down the first baseline, like all the way down the right field line to a locker room, and wouldn't let us get into a locker room.
That's minor league baseball special right there.
Wouldn't let us get in the locker room. And it was funny because the Cardinals, it was St. Louis team, the Cardinals director of field operations, or some guy that worked for the Major League Club, was there, and he called his equivalent with the Devil Rays, and they called him and threatened to fire him on the spot. So, like, you're embarrassing the Devil Rays organization. Really, we don't care what happened in your A-ball game. I think that was their point. Yeah. We don't really care. It's not about you. It's not about the umpires. It's about our players and their development. So you should start focusing on the things that we feel are important, right? Right. But yeah, so he was crazy. I think he lasted about 2 years as a minor league manager, and he was out. He would just fly off the handle about stuff that he should never have flown off the handle about. But yeah, that was chase us down. And, did I mention that wouldn't let us back in the locker room, and that was at the end of game 1 of a doubleheader?
So you had to come out and have fun with them again.
We had to get changed and go right back out there.
Now I understand where you get your love for doubleheaders.
I don't think, as far as I can remember, I don't think he was managing game 2. Okay. I think the Devil Rays probably told him, hey, you're sitting out game 2, let the hitting coach manage or something, right. Because you're likely to get yourself run pretty early in game 2. So.
And it's A-ball. And he's not making much of a salary.
60-something games or something we played, right? Or 70-something games. I think played 76 games or 79 games or some crazy number in a very short period of time. Season started around mid to 20th of June or something. So, and you get rainouts, there's not much time to make them up. I remember we made one trip to Lowell, Mass, and we worked 4 games in 2 days. And I was like, I never want to do this again. This is awful.
Back then, did you guys play 7 innings in the minor leagues on doubleheaders?
7s and doubleheaders, yeah.
I got to say, I like 7 innings in Major League doubleheaders, but what I like the most is that they're making the games up right away that weekend, trying to get it done within the series. Everyone gets excited for the series in that time of the year, so get the games out of the way. Don't push it down the road because you could run into problems later.
Yeah. From an umpire perspective, I appreciate 7s more than 9s. I really
Especially
do.
when there's 2.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
in Major League Baseball, they got it pretty nice, though, too, is that the guys working the bases are the ones that got to rock both games. New plate umpire for each game, so.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of money at stake, right?
Oh, no question. No question. And that's the reality of the game.
Yeah.
Before we move on from A-ball, I just want to know, how many years did you spend in A-ball total?
So when I left the New York Penn League and I went to extended spring training, this time in Port St. Lucie with the Mets, and spent the full time. It was crazy because I was like the next guy to get promoted. At that time, we just started rankings. Like, okay, here's your ranking. So I think I was number 16 to get promoted in, out of the New York Penn League, that high, whatever they call it, short season A, they call it at the time. So I was number 16 and it was like, I was the next guy to go. And I went through the whole time. I was scheduled to go to the South Atlantic League instead of, not the South Atlantic League. I was scheduled to go back to the New York Penn League, but at the All-Star break, something happened up the chain, and a guy named Mike Malinsky, who you guys may have heard of, he was working in the Midwest League, and he got promoted to High A. And so I got promoted to fill his spot. And I worked with a guy named Billy Parker, who's now a fire chief in his hometown of Michigan. But Billy and I we were at Sarasota together. He was a guy that was a year ahead of me, so he would have gotten in 99 when I was supposed to go to the evaluation course. So we ended up working the rest of the season in the Midwest League together. That was a great league, by the way. The league president there, George Spelius, is what a classy human being. His daughter is married to Marty Foster.
Oh, wow.
Who's also a big leaguer.
Yep.
And I mean, he was the league president at the time, and he used to billet the umpires at his house. Lo and behold, Marty and his daughter, have a little spark. We'll call it the little spark. And anyways, now they're married and have a family together. But George was just the best. He would look after the umpires unlike any other league president I'd ever come across.
Okay.
He was a remarkable human being. So anyways, after that season, I think I was ranked number 16 again. So I had a pretty good, got to playoffs in the Midwest League. I'd worked the championship series in the New York Penn League, went to Midwest League, met a great bunch of guys. One of my best friends came to my wedding. Jeff Spizak is his name, ended up working with me in AA, but that's really where I got to know him, was in the Midwest League. And then went to spring training the next year, and where the heck did I go? So I was in Vero with the Dodgers my first year. My second year, I would have been at Baseball City, it was called, with the Royals, back when the Royals were in Florida. And great group of guys. Todd Tishner was on my spring training crew. Scott Kennedy, who you might know Scott Kennedy from
Umpire
and officials
connected.
What the heck? Yes, officially connected. That's what, give him a plug there. We were on that crew together with the Royals, and probably the biggest memory I have of there, besides Titch making it to the big leagues, and the Royals just want to talk about a classy organization, man. They would hook you up, big spread in the minor league umpires locker room. You never saw that during spring training, but our hotel was right on the main strip, and there was nothing there. Like, we were right on the I-4, which is a big highway that goes from one side of the state to the other. And there was this Chinese food restaurant 2 doors down from the hotel. And I'm not a seafood guy. Like, I don't eat crab or lobster or anything, but these guys on my crew, we go to this Chinese food restaurant, they'd be there for 2 hours just crushing crab legs. Like, there were 2 days a week where it was all you could eat crab legs, and these guys ate all you could eat crab legs. Oh. I'd be like, see you guys in an hour when you get back to the hotel. But what a blast. So then, I left spring training there, and I spent 2 weeks in the South Atlantic League, worked a couple of series, Kannapolis, North Carolina, which is like the Dale Earnhardt Jr. space.
Okay.
And then I think I was in Greensboro with the Yankees for a series. And then I got the call. I got promoted to the Florida State League, where I worked with Mike Estabrooks. So Estabrooks was on my crew in the Florida State League, playoffs in the Florida State League, which was interesting because we're in Lakeland and it was my first tropical storm experience. We got rained out one night in the playoffs. There was 2 feet of water on the field. And we're not playing tonight, boys. But the cool part about the state league was you had all these, you got rain every night. So you want to talk about, like, if you're a minor league umpire and you want to learn how to handle rain situations, you need to go through the Florida State League.
Right.
Because you get rain. Come July, you get rain every single day.
5 o'clock every night.
Every
Rain
day.
for an hour and a half.
Lightning strikes crazy. And so that's the first place where I saw a grounds crew not be able to get the tarp on the field because it just, not that you asked for the tarp too late, just it started raining too hard. That was in Dunedin that happened to me. And then, we had a 4th of July game in Port Charlotte where the Rangers played. And that's where I got my first glimpse of a guy straight from college to high A named Mark Teixeira. You may have heard of him. He's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, played with the Yankees for a little bit, And so it rained harder than I've ever seen it rain in my life. And we look in the parking lot, and there's some shallow spots in the parking lot, and the water was up to the top of the side windows in the parking lot. And I'm thinking, there's like 4 feet of water on the field. And I'm like, why have you guys not called this yet? They're like, sold out fireworks. We're like, but this is not happening. The groundskeeper goes, oh, yeah? Apparently, they had a system underneath the playing surface that would suck the water away. Flip a switch, and it would go whoosh.
Wow.
It stopped raining. There were feet of water on the field. Like 35 minutes after it stopped raining, we were throwing first pitch.
Dry as a bone.
I was like, hello, what just happened? I've never seen anything like this in my life. And they had this, we had another situation in Port Charlotte that appeared to be the place on the Gulf. We got all the rain where we had lightning. We're supposed to play a doubleheader. We had lightning for like 4 hours. It was a 5 o'clock start. We banged it at 9 o'clock, and they were showing us on this really cool radar. I don't even know what it was called, SAS or some other kind of radar, that they could show you cells within 25 meters of the stadium.
Oh, wow.
That's how precise it was. Yeah. I was like, that is amazing. So that's the type of stuff they're dealing with in the big leagues that we don't get to see at our, the local ballpark. We're like, what's the radar look like? Let me grab my cell phone.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is what I got on this IntelliCast app is it looks like we should be good. And
we're not. Like 45 minutes later, 20% chance of rain and 100% chance that it actually happened.
Yeah, so the Florida State League was cool, worked the playoffs, and then came home. After the New York Penn League, I had gone back down to Florida in October for Instructional League. My crew was a guy named Troy Fullwood, who worked a bunch of games in the big leagues. He was my chief, and now he's like the head of the ACC and Sun Coast Conference or something, like a pretty big shooter on the college scene from an assigning standpoint. A guy, Darren Williams from Arkansas, and Chad Fairchild.
Okay.
Was a name you might recognize. Yeah. Yep. So Chad was on my crew, and he was from there. We stayed. Where did we stay? Bradenton, maybe? No, we were camped out in Fort Myers. So we were down in Fort Myers, and we had the Red Sox and the Twins, and then we would drive north for the Pirates and somebody else. But that was a cool experience going back in the fall. And then so when I got from A-ball, after the Florida State League, I got promoted in the offseason to AA, and that was a bit of a scary experience because I went to spring training that year with the Twins. Adam Dowdy was my crew chief, and Adam at the time he was getting in trouble a little bit from Major League Baseball, and he had big league spring, and then they sent him back down to minor league spring. But man, did I ever learn a lot from him about situation handling and stuff, right? And then I went to first year AA, and things went okay. Back to spring training the next year to Vero again. Damian Beal was my crew chief, and Damian was another guy that had some big league time after that. Yeah, then went to AA as a crew chief. And I had Jeff Spizak and a guy named Mayhew Edwards III, or Mikey Edwards. They were on my crew. And then, after that season, we worked playoffs and stuff. And Spizak went to Nicaragua for winter ball.
Okay.
I went to Venezuela, and so did Mike. And, you know, in talking to Jeff, we had vastly different experiences.
Okay.
Right? His was like, oh, they loved us. They treated us like gold, and they really, really looked after us. And it was like the first year that Nicaragua had a winter league, so they were trying to do it up right so that they could stay and get a lot of affiliated people. And it was not an established league. And Venezuela was tough, man. It was really intense. Yeah. So you wouldn't think winter ball would have that kind of intensity. And it was really intense. And it was the same sort of scenario. Like you're 3 flights a week. You're 3 airplane flights a week. You weren't working more than one day in a city. You know, I got really sick. I got some sort of stomach infection. I lost 21 pounds in 13 days.
Oh, gross.
So it was no joke. It was 4 Imodium and 4 Aleve just to make sure I didn't crap myself when I was tying up my shoes. Oh. And then the games are all 4 hours long. I'd been there. It was like my 3rd game or something. I'm at second base, and my leg gets all itchy. I'm like, what's going on? Why is my leg itchy? And I look, and I have ants crawling all up and down my leg, like up my pant leg, behind the sock. They're biting me. And I look, and I was like, I've been standing like this normal positioning I would take on the inside of the infield at second base in a 4-umpire system. I've been standing on an anthill with these South American ants that I have nothing about, and you're itching your neck. And I was like, this is a terrible way to start my first trip outside of North America, right? Yeah. And so I went over to my crew chief, Venezuelan guy named Manny Gonzalez.
Okay, another major leaguer name
drop. I've heard of him too. So Manny's my crew chief, and he's good. At the time, I think he's in A-ball or something, maybe, you know, whatever, A-ball. But he's been working this Venezuelan Winter League with all these big leaguers for years. And so he's a pretty damn good A-ball umpire, right? And he knows the way of the land, and he speaks pretty decent English. And, of course, he's fluent in Spanish and knows everywhere. And I said to him, Manny, like, this is going on. He calls out the trainer. Well, it turns out the trainer is a guy that works in affiliated ball in the States. He's from Venezuela, but he speaks perfect English. He's like, yeah, they're probably not going to cause a problem, but here, take this. It was like Benadryl or something. Take this just in case. And I was like, it's the 3rd inning. I'm like,
I'm going to be sleeping by the 5th.
We got 3 more hours to play because they got 35 guys on the active roster, and they're doing lefty, righty matchups in like the 2nd inning, 3rd inning. And you got your starters, like your best starters in the league are all maybe 1-0 or 0-0. Yeah. Like nobody's got a win-loss record. All the relievers do. But they're paying all these guys this money, so they want to get them into games. Right. And so the games are all 4 hours long. Like some were 5 and just exhausting. So yeah, so it was, I mean, and of course, once I got sick, I was like, oh, I don't want to do anything, man. I just want to, you know, drink 12 bottles of Gatorade and go to bed. And then, I mean, you got to strap it on. You go out every night, and the games start late, and you make it work, right? And you get some situation handling experience, that's for sure. I mean, I was down there with a guy named Angel Campos, who's one of my best friends ever through baseball. And he worked like 585 games in the big leagues, and you know, didn't get a full-time gig. And, you know, he had a situation with a catcher named Yorbi Torrealba, who played with Colorado for years and the Giants, I believe, where, you know, he got to AAA, and I think it is like 4th or 5th year. It might have been his 5th year he got to AAA, and he was a good umpire. So the big leagues was looking at him and basically said, you need to go to winter ball, handle as many situations as you can. So Torrealba, fair foul down the 3rd base line, and Torrealba starts screaming at the Venezuelan umpire at 3rd base, and Angel tells him in Spanish to quit it, you know, stop, blah, blah. And Torrealba basically tells him where to go. So Angel dumps him, and Torrealba charges him. Angel puts his mask up in front of him to protect himself. Well, doesn't he split Torrealba's lip open? Like, you talk about the worst luck, right?
Situation.
The worst, like he's just putting his hands up to protect himself as Torrealba's a, you know, raging bull charging at him, splits his lip. Guess who's waiting in the parking lot with his posse after the game for Angel?
Oh, no.
Like you experience that in Venezuela. You never experience that in the U.S. or continental America. Like,
You didn't you, up there in Hudson Valley with the devil race?
well, yeah, I was never actually concerned about my physical well-being. He wasn't going to put his hands on us, but he was making it really hard for me to get ready for my plate job. Right? Like, and I mean, having no experience, that throws you off a little bit. I was probably flustered for a few innings, and I think I did miss an absolute gut shot. Bell high fastball right in the middle of the plate. Ball. Where was that one? I don't know. Like,
Right.
Somewhere right down the middle. That one's on me. I'll get it right next time, I promise.
Well, that concludes this episode of The Leading Edge, where we talk with umpires about umpiring and look to cover topics on both sides of the plate. Join us on our next episode, where we complete this interview with former minor league umpire and current WBSC umpire Keith McConkey. Topics covered are completing his minor league career, working the 2005 All-Star Futures game and being on the field for the 2005 Major League Baseball Home Run Derby, working international baseball, including the 2019 Pan American Games in Lima, Peru, and of course we put him through the gauntlet and make him do 10 questions. But before you go, we would like to leave you with this. There's a common rule myth that people believe that a runner is out if they slap hands or high-five players or coaches on their own team when they are rounding the bases. Our question is, what happens if they slap somebody on the other team? Take care, everybody, and stay safe.